Florida, one December, I witnessed a Christmas sing-along around the swimming pool. Santa, in his usual outfit, leading the crowd on electric piano. Only this took place in 27-degree heat, and they were singing White Christmas, something I think they don't usually have down there. Needless to say, the absurdity of the scene was not lost on me. And in some land in Florida, Santa ends up in the pool with his electric piano thrown after him, still plugged in. The first historical story I wrote, The Two Ladies of Rose Cottage, was inspired by both the place and my interest in Thomas Hardy. I once paid a visit to the house where he was born in Bockhampton, Dorset, and stood in the room where he was cast aside as dead by the doctor who delivered him, only to be revived by a quick-thinking nurse. As I looked out of his upstairs window on much the same view he often enjoyed as he wrote his early books, this short story of murder and deceit ranging over more than 100 years began to form in my mind, and Hardy himself even makes a brief appearance in it. Other stories have their origins in such diverse sources as an unusual piece of information, carrion, fragments of dreams, fan mail, stories recounted by others, The Wrong Hands and Memory Lane, and research for other works. I doubt that I would ever have written In Flanders Fields or Missing in Action, for example, if I hadn't spent so much time researching the Second World War for In a Dry Season. Sometimes, as in Gone to the Dogs and The Duke's Wife, I was asked for a story on a specific topic, in these cases American football and Shakespeare, respectively. But no matter how much or how little is given or demanded, there is always a lot to change and more to add, all subjected to the constant what-if of the writer's imagination. While I did mention earlier that most of the stories here represent a break from Inspector Banks, there are 3 Banks short stories in the collection. In a way, they were the hardest for me to write, because I'm so used to giving Banks plenty of space. There's little room for significant character or plot development in a short story, or for the creation of multiple points of view. Still, it was impossible to resist the temptation to try, especially to have Banks attempt to solve the mystery of a man who claims to have been murdered in a previous lifetime, as happens in Summer Rain. You'll have to judge the results for yourselves. Finally, the Inspector Banks novella, Going Back, is a special case and has never been published before. I wrote it early in 1999, so it came between In a Dry Season and Cold is the Grave. At that point, I didn't know that I was going to send Banks home to deal with his old school friend's disappearance in Close to Home, 2003, and I wanted to show him interacting with his family and responding to the place where he grew up. In manuscript, it reached 106 pages, too long for any of the magazines or anthologies that regularly published my stories, and too short for separate book publication. And so it sat there, gathering dust, until I came to write The Summer That Never Was, when I incorporated parts of the novella into the novel, mostly details about the street Banks grew up on, his relationship with his parents, the music he listened to, and the books he read as an adolescent. When I came to revise Going Back for this collection, I had to shift it chronologically so that it now falls between The Summer That Never Was and Playing with Fire. I also had to try to avoid too much repetition of details I had cannibalized for the novel without spoiling the original conception. It was a difficult balancing act, but I hope that you enjoy the final result, along with the rest of the stories in this collection. Peter Robinson, February 2004. Summer Rain, an Inspector Banks story. 1. And exactly how many times have you died, Mr. Singer? 14. That's 14 I've managed to uncover. They say that each human being has lived about 20 incarnations, but it's the last one I'm telling you about. See, I died by violence. I was murdered. Detective Constable Susan Gay made a note on the yellow pad in front of her.